Hi guys, today we're going to continue our study in Exodus chapter 3, where we're going to find Moses has his encounter with the burning bush, and we'll start out in verses 1 through 3. And it reads, Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert, and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. So Moses is going about doing his work for Jethro. He's taking his flock around to Mount Horeb, which also comes later to be known as Mount Sinai, and he sees a burning bush there, and it intrigues him, and he comes closer to this bush to check it out. I guess a burning bush wasn't that uncommon a sight back in the day, but I guess this bush had something different in store for Moses. And at this point, it's 40 years later from the last chapter, so we can assume from that Moses is about 80 years old. And yeah, like I said, Moses saw this bush, and he was very attracted to it. He wanted to see it. It was magnetic for him. And we're going to see what the bush holds from him in the next few verses 4 through 6. 4 through 6 says, So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. God didn't speak to Moses here until he had Moses' full attention. Sometimes as Christians, God won't speak to us unless we give him our full attention. The gifts of the Bible or the gifts of a sermon won't really bear fruit unless we are listening, unless we give it our full and undivided attention. God called to Moses in the midst of this bush. Moses didn't see anyone in the bush when he was from afar off, but he gets closer and he sees the angel of the Lord. Now, the angel of the Lord, a lot of people like to say that it's Jesus before his incarnation. I like to agree with that. He shows himself in many different places. You can check that out in Genesis 16 verses 7 through 13, Judges 2 verses 1 through 5, Judges 6 verses 11 through 24, Judges 13 verses 3 through 22. And all those verses show where the angel of the Lord has come down to speak with people. The first words that come out of the bush are Moses, Moses. So God calls Moses by his first name. It shows that even though Moses was kind of an obscure reference in his own mind, being a shepherd and all that God knew who he was, and Moses was definitely important to God. He then told Moses to do two things at that point. He tells him to keep his distance, which it says, do not draw near this place, and to also show a reverence to God, where he says, take your sandals off your feet. Moses was supposed to show special honor to this occasion because of his immediate presence to God. Do not draw near, when it states that, it literally means stop coming closer. Moses was coming up for a real up and close examination of this bush when God told him, hey, back off. And so Moses then hides his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. God asked Moses to do what is appropriate for any creature who is in the midst of their creator, to show reverence and recognition of God's holiness. And Moses does that by looking away, because Moses is a sinful creature, and a sinful people with sin, and people of a sinful nature cannot be close to God and close to his righteousness. I'm sure back in those days Moses was remembering what happened in the previous chapter where he killed an Egyptian, and I'm sure that sin was with him for quite a while. But because of those sins, Moses showed a reverence to God when God spoke to him. All right, let's keep going with this, and we'll take a look at God's commission to Moses, which will go through verses 7 through 10. 7 through 10 is going to explain God's general plan for Moses and Moses' place within God's plan. So it reads, "And the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, so I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." So obviously God didn't just decide to give Israel these lands. These lands that are spoken of were spoken of back in the days of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These were foretold a long time ago. When God says that he's seen the oppression of his people who are in Egypt and have heard their cry, it's so Moses and Israel can therefore see the compassionate heart of God, that God emphasized that he would deliver them from the Egyptian taskmasters. And the land of Canaan that he's speaking of was belonged to Israel since the day that God promised it to Abraham. God will move Israel there now because of the compassion of his heart. The actions were ordained long ago, but the timing was prompted by God's heartfelt love for his people. There was a connection between the principles of what God was going to do and what he still wanted to do using Moses. God could do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, be that delivering his people by himself or whatever, but he chose Moses, and he chooses people to do his work. He chooses us humans to do his work. We'll go on to verses 11 through 12, and this is going to be Moses' answer to, and God's reply to Moses' answer. "But Moses said to God, 'Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?' So he said, 'I will certainly be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain.'" So Moses asks, "Who am I that you're going to do this with me? Who am I? I'm just this shepherd who has nothing to do with Egypt." Back in the days when Moses was up in the higher echelon of Egypt, he tried to do it himself. But now that he's been out wandering the desert for 40 years, he's lost his self-confidence. He's lost confidence in himself. But God tells him that he's certainly going to be with him, which, if God is with you, who can be against you? And he says that to give